Hey guys, it's Graham. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about my 4 tips to help you have the perfect au pair experience. So my 4 tips are picking the right host family, getting the right location, the amount of work you do, and the duration of your au pair stay. Alright, so let's jump right in. So I wanted to share these 4 tips with you guys because I didn't really know what it took to have a perfect au pair stay before I became an au pair. And so I want to share these with you so you can have a better knowledge of this and get going with your au pair experience. So the first one I have is to pick the right host family. This one is really important, and oftentimes au pairs overlook this one. I did too, and it ended horribly. So it's super important to pick the right host family the first time. I've made a couple videos about this and I'll put them somewhere up here. But when looking for a host family, you want to find one that's going to be compatible with your personality. You want to make sure their family dynamic is compatible with what you enjoy in a family, and maybe even what your family dynamic is back home in your own family. So you don't want a family that's going to go against your personality or your beliefs and make it more difficult for you to integrate into their family life. Some things to consider with a host family is their religion, how much the parents work, kind of the kids' personality, do they play sports, do they do music, and just take all those questions and pull that into your own experience and how you can go from there and take that knowledge and make the right decision. A big thing to consider with the host family is the number of host kids. This tip can be a bit underrated as well. Make sure that you're not going to be caring for a number of children that you're not comfortable with. So for example, in my experience, I've learned that one child is not quite as much drama, but it's more work because you're having to constantly entertain them. Whereas 4 kids, which is what I'm about to be an au pair for, 4 kids, it's a lot more work, but you don't have to entertain the kids as much. So kind of think about what you want and pick a host family based on that. The last thing I have to say with host families is to check their references from previous au pairs. If they have previous au pairs, be sure to talk to them and see what their experience was like and what their thoughts were on the family. Again, I've made a whole other video on how to pick a good host family, and like I said, I'll put that somewhere up top. So the second point I want to talk about is location. Location is really important because this is going to be a city or a town that you're living in for a part of your life. So make sure that you're not going to go somewhere that you won't enjoy. My biggest advice here is to just do some homework on your host city or your host country. So Google what the night scene is like, the cultural things, the experiences you can do, how easy is it to travel from your host city. Look up all these different questions and ask your host parents too. They live there, they can give you a lot of tips on the culture of the city and the general feel of it. This isn't so important with big cities like Paris, Madrid, Barcelona, Berlin, because they're gonna have a lot of opportunities anyway and a little bit of everything. This is more important with those smaller cities inside your host country that might not have quite as many options and opportunities as the big cities. Another big one on location is the language of your host country or your host family. This is important because you want to be able to communicate with your host family very effectively. My au pair horror story was all because I couldn't communicate with the host family very well. And so you want to make sure that either you are proficient in the language of the host country or the host family is proficient in your native language, or English. If you're watching this, your English is pretty good. So make sure that you can communicate well with your host family so you won't have any issues down the road. I cannot stress this point enough. Please make sure you can communicate with your host family. Also, you're going to have a really hard time making friends in your host country if you can't speak at least some of the host language. Now in my experience, I've seen that a lot of young people want to talk to me just because they want to practice their English skills, and so that may be the case in your host country, but it may not too. So it is good to know at least some of your host language before you go to your host country. The third point to consider, this is kind of subtle but important, is how much work you're going to be doing. This point is especially relevant for new au pairs who don't really know how much work they enjoy doing, but you're going to want to make sure that you're not doing more work than you were prepared to do. Personally, I enjoy working, and so I've always looked for host families that have a lot of work because it helps me keep busy and it helps me kind of assimilate more into the culture and the personality of the host country and the host family. I've made a video about saving money as an au pair, and I've talked about working outside of the host family, like in a cafe or teaching English or something like that, and so feel free to check that out. Again, I'll try to link it here or here. The last thing I have to say about the amount of work you're doing is consider your off days. If you're planning on taking little weekend trips around Europe or wherever you are, Australia, the US, make sure that your off days are going to align so that you'll have enough days to where you can travel and enjoy some time without just having to go one day and come back the next day. I suggest at least having 2 days off every week consistently where you're not going to be babysitting or working any that day. The last point is duration. Again, this one is kind of for new au pairs who have never experienced au pair life, but make sure that the duration of your au pair stay is not too short or too long for what you're wanting. So for me, my first au pair experience was for only 2 months. It was just a summer, but I had never traveled abroad. My family doesn't really travel that much, and so it was completely new for me, completely new for my family. So it was perfect. I loved it. I did not want to come home, but then that gave me an opportunity once I got home to where I could get ready and go back a second time, which I did, and now I'm getting ready to go back a third time. So make sure that the duration of your stay is not too long that first time, because you don't want to go through the visa process and all these extra steps just to find out that you're not really suited for long-term travel. A great option is what I did, be a summer au pair. You can go, this works if you're studying in college, you can go in June, come home in mid-August before your classes start, and still be able to finish out your college semester. My biggest piece of advice on this point though is to plan yourself some space around your au pair trip. Like I said, my first experience, I went to Europe as a summer au pair. I loved it. I didn't want to come home, and I realized that I would have really liked to go back immediately to be an au pair again. But I'd already signed up for college in the fall semester, and so I had to complete that. So my suggestion is to don't give yourself too many responsibilities right after your au pair stay, because you don't want to keep yourself out of potential au pair opportunities in the future. Now, of course, if you know for certain that you do well traveling abroad, do well away from your family, then go for that long-term trip. It will be less work in the long run to just go for the long-term trip, but don't go for that if you're not ready. It can be a lot. Alright guys, so thanks so much for watching my 4 tips on how to have a perfect au pair experience. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you think about this. If you've enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. I post new content every Monday and Thursday. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.